My name is Arthur Pendleton. For 66 years, the universe, to me, was a magnificent clockwork mechanism, governed by elegant equations and observable phenomena. I was a physicist, trained at MIT, residing in Boston, Massachusetts, and my world was one of quantifiable data, rigorous experimentation, and empirical evidence. Science wasn't just my profession, it was my sanctuary, the lens through which I interpreted all existence. It was the only truth I acknowledged. The bright torch illuminating the mysteries of the cosmos, pushing back the shadows of superstition and myth. Talk of God? Divinity? Spirituality? I categorized such notions alongside fairy tales and folklore, comforting narratives for those unable to grapple with the cold, hard truths of a universe indifferent to human longing. To put it mildly, I was uninterested. To be blunt, I was a firm non-believer. In my 6.5 decades, no deity had manifested before my eyes, no miracle had ever swayed my conviction. My faith resided in the reproducible result, the peer-reviewed paper, the power of human intellect to unravel reality's secrets. Logic was my guide, reason my shield. But on October 22, 2023, the fortress of certainty I had meticulously constructed over a lifetime was not merely breached, it was utterly obliterated. I died clinically for 36 minutes and came face to face with a reality far more terrifying, complex, and wondrous than my scientific mind could have ever conceived, a reality that included the undeniable truth about the world and about the ignored, starved state of my own soul. I was born into a middle-class Boston family where education was paramount. My father, an engineer, and my mother, a teacher, instilled in me the belief that knowledge was the master key. Science captivated me early. Backyard chemistry experiments that nearly singed off my eyebrows evolved into late nights poring over texts on quantum mechanics. I earned my PhD from MIT and built a respectable career as a researcher at a prestigious lab, dedicating my life to probing the fundamental nature of matter and energy. I published dozens of papers, received awards, lectured internationally, and carried the quiet pride of contributing, in my own small way, to the expansion of human understanding. But science had become more than a vocation, it was my dogma. Anything that couldn't be measured, tested, or proven was dismissed. When my beloved wife, Helen, a woman of deep and abiding Catholic faith, gently invited me to church, I'd offer a patronizing smile. "Darling," I'd say, "I don't need ancient myths to appreciate the universe's grandeur. I have Hubble images and Maxwell's equations." When our daughter, Emily, asked about the soul as a child, I offered the standard reductionist explanation. "Sweetheart, soul is just an old-fashioned word for consciousness, an emergent property of complex neural networks. When the brain ceases to function, that's the end." I wasn't intentionally cruel, merely certain. Spirituality, in my view, was a psychological crutch, a comforting illusion for those afraid of the finality of death. My life ran on predictable tracks, mornings in the lab analyzing data, afternoons lecturing undergraduates, evenings immersed in scientific journals. There was no room for ambiguity, no time for the ethereal. When Helen succumbed to cancer 6 years prior, at the age of 60, the void she left was immense. But I didn't pray. I didn't seek solace in faith. I buried my grief in work, doubling down on research, believing the familiar discipline of science would somehow quantify and contain the pain. Yet, in quiet, unguarded moments, a question sometimes surfaced, unbidden, from a place deeper than intellect. What does any of this mean? It was a question my equations couldn't answer. A variable unaccounted for. I pushed it away fiercely. I was Arthur Pendleton, Ph.D. I didn't entertain unprovable notions. I dealt in facts. October 22, 2023, dawned gray and tempestuous. I was driving my reliable sedan from my home in Boston proper towards Cambridge for a physics symposium. The rain was torrential, lashing against the windshield with furious intensity. Thunder cracked overhead, rattling the car frame, and lightning periodically illuminated the drenched landscape in stark, monochrome flashes. But the weather was merely an inconvenience. I was focused on the complex gravitational wave data I planned to present. I'd driven this route along the forested parkway hundreds, perhaps thousands of times. As I navigated a familiar curve bordered by dense woods, the sky unleashed a particularly violent crescendo. A blinding fork of lightning, impossibly bright, struck a massive, ancient oak tree just yards from the roadside. The sound was instantaneous and deafening, an explosive crack that seemed to rip the air apart. With horrifying speed, the centuries-old tree groaned, splintered, and began its majestic, inexorable fall directly across the roadway. Instinct took over. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching, hydroplaning slightly on the slick asphalt. My car fishtailed but shuddered to a halt just feet from the massive trunk now blocking both lanes. Relief washed over me for a fraction of a second, immediately followed by stark terror as I glanced in the rearview mirror. Headlights bore down on me, far too close, far too fast. The driver behind me, blinded by the rain and the sudden obstruction, had no time to react. The impact was catastrophic. A sickening crunch of metal on metal, the shriek of tortured steel. My head snapped back against the headrest, then forward. My car spun violently, propelled by the force of the collision. The world became a kaleidoscope of shattering glass, buckling metal, and the horrifying sensation of my own body being crushed, twisted, broken. The pain was white-hot, incandescent, overwhelming, and then, mercifully, absolute darkness. Oblivion. The next sensation wasn't pain, or fear, or even confusion. It was floating. A distinct feeling of weightlessness, of being untethered. I opened eyes I no longer physically possessed, and looked down. The scene below was one of utter devastation. My car, crumpled like a discarded soda can, was pinned between the fallen tree and the SUV that had rear-ended me. And inside the wreckage was my body. Arthur Pendleton, aged 66. Slumped over the steering wheel, motionless, unnaturally pale, a dark stain spreading across my shirt. Blood slicked the rain-washed pavement. The initial collision had triggered a chain reaction. Cars behind the SUV had plowed into it, and more vehicles piled up behind them, a terrifying concertina of mangled metal and shattered glass stretching back down the rain-swept road. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance, growing rapidly louder. Figures moved amidst the wreckage, dazed survivors stumbling out of cars, others trapped, crying out. I saw a woman clutching a small child, sobbing hysterically. I saw another driver kneeling by the side of the road, hands clasped tightly, lips moving in silent prayer. And I felt nothing. No agony from my broken form below. No panic. No grief. Instead, a profound sense of detachment settled over me, accompanied by an almost clinical curiosity. It was bizarre. Part of my consciousness registered the horror, the tragedy unfolding. But the dominant sensation was that of a scientist observing an unexpected, complex phenomenon. Fascinating. A detached part of my mind noted, the human response to extreme trauma varies significantly. Note the adrenaline-induced shock in some, the immediate turn to faith-based coping mechanisms in others. It was as if my soul, newly freed from the physical constraints of the brain and body, reverted to its lifelong default setting, observation and analysis, even in the face of my own demise. Then, the fabric of reality around me seemed to ripple, to tear. The rain-soaked accident scene, the flashing emergency lights, the sounds of suffering, they dissolved like mist. In their place, a new vista unfolded, vast and terrifyingly immediate. It wasn't a memory, nor was it a dream. It felt hyperreal, imbued with a chilling certainty. I saw cities engulfed in flames. Mushroom clouds bloomed on distant horizons. Warplanes streaked across blood-red skies, unleashing payloads of destruction. Tanks rolled through rubble-strewn streets where desperate figures fled in terror. This wasn't history, it felt present, or terrifyingly imminent. World War III. Not as a theoretical possibility discussed in think tanks, but as a brutal, consuming reality. Simultaneously, the planet itself seemed to revolt. Colossal tsunami waves, higher than skyscrapers, surged inland, swallowing coastlines whole. Volcanoes erupted with apocalyptic fury, spewing ash that choked the atmosphere and rained down fire. The ground buckled and split in violent earthquakes, toppling buildings like children's blocks. Droughts turned fertile lands into barren dust bowls, while elsewhere, unprecedented floods raged. Governments collapsed under the strain. Economies disintegrated. Communication networks failed. Law and order vanished, replaced by desperation and survivalism. Famine stalked the land, gaunt faces staring out from skeletal bodies. It wasn't a sequence of events. It was a terrifying symphony of simultaneous collapse, a convergence of catastrophes, war, plague, natural disaster, societal breakdown, all happening at once, feeding off each other in a spiral of destruction. A cold dread, deeper than any physical fear, permeated my detached consciousness. This wasn't some distant, hypothetical future culled from dystopian fiction. This felt ordained, inevitable, a reaping, a consequence. A bell was tolling, I realized with sudden, chilling clarity. Not just for me, lying broken in a car wreck, but for the world I had known. The final act had begun. Into this maelstrom of apocalyptic visions, a voice emerged. It wasn't auditory, not sound waves traveling through air, but a presence, a resonance that vibrated within the very core of my being. It was warm, gentle, yet carried an authority that instantly commanded my full attention, cutting through the terrifying spectacle like sunlight piercing storm clouds. "Do you see now, my son?" I turned, not physically, for I had no body to turn, but my awareness shifted, reoriented itself. The fiery, chaotic visions receded, though their horrifying imprint remained. Before me stood a figure. A man, clothed in simple, luminous white robes. His face radiated a kindness, a compassion so profound it felt like a physical force. His eyes, deep and ancient, seemed to contain the wisdom of galaxies. Yet they regarded me with an intimacy that suggested he knew every thought I'd ever had, every doubt I'd ever harbored. Recognition was instantaneous, absolute, bypassing intellect entirely. It wasn't a deduction based on historical depictions or religious iconography. It was a soul-level knowing, an undeniable resonance. This was Jesus Christ, the figure Helen had prayed to. The name I had dismissed as myth stood before me, more real than the scientific principles I had dedicated my life to. He moved closer, and the light emanating from him intensified, bathing me in an energy that felt like pure, unconditional love mixed with an awesome, majestic power. It wasn't the harsh light of judgment I might have expected, had I expected anything at all, but a light of infinite understanding and profound sorrow. "Arthur," he said, his voice the same one that had resonated within me, gentle yet powerful, filled with an aching tenderness. "I have waited a long time for you." Panic surged through my consciousness, a chaotic flood of conflicting thoughts and emotions. Waited for me? Me? Arthur Pendleton, the skeptic, the scoffer? Why? How? Is this real? Is this a brain anomaly, a hallucination triggered by death? My scientific mind scrambled for explanations, for footing on familiar ground, but found none. The sheer, overwhelming reality of his presence defied every paradigm I held dear. I wanted to question, to argue, to demand proof, to deploy the logic that had always been my shield. But I couldn't. My consciousness felt paralyzed, silenced by the triple shock of my violent death, the horrifying glimpse of planetary unraveling, and the impossible, undeniable presence of Jesus Christ himself. He smiled, a gentle, knowing expression that encompassed all my frantic, silent questions. "Yes, Arthur. All that you have just witnessed is truth," he affirmed, his voice calming the storm within me, though the implications remain staggering. The world you left behind teeters on the brink, lost in shadows of its own making. Jesus' gaze swept over the lingering psychic imprint of the chaotic visions. Humanity has strayed far from the path of light. He continued, his voice now imbued with a profound sadness, yet underscored by unwavering authority. Those who choose cruelty, who sow discord, who exploit their fellow beings with calculating malice, their time of reckoning is at hand. My Father's justice, tempered always by mercy, must prevail. He looked directly at me, his eyes seeming to pierce the veil between worlds. Some souls, consumed entirely by their wickedness, will face a fate you glimpsed, their essence dissolving, forfeiting their individuality, becoming mere fuel for the darkness they served. Their light extinguished forever, absorbed into the void. My non-existent blood ran cold at the thought, a finality more terrifying than any physical death. Yet, he added, a subtle shift in his tone, even consignment to the realms you call hell is not necessarily eternal damnation for all. For many souls, it is another, harsher classroom. A place where consequences are starkly felt. Where the soul, though suffering, retains its identity. It is a chance, albeit a difficult one, for eventual purification, for learning the lessons missed, often through repeated cycles of existence. As he spoke, understanding bloomed within my mind, not as intellectual concepts, but as experiential knowing. I perceived the vast, intricate tapestry of reincarnation, souls journeying through countless lifetimes, inhabiting different forms, facing different challenges, each life a precious opportunity to evolve, to learn. To choose love over fear, light over darkness, service over self. I saw souls progressing, souls stagnating, souls falling back. All part of an immense cosmic educational system designed ultimately for return to the source. I, Arthur, the man who believed death was the absolute end, was witnessing the mechanics of eternal life and soul progression. It was staggering. Jesus observed the dawning comprehension on my spiritual face. He tilted his head slightly, his expression gentle but probing. And now, Arthur, son of reason, he asked, the question resonating deep within my shattered worldview. Do you believe? I couldn't form a verbal response. Logic failed me. Scientific paradigms crumbled. All that remained was the raw, undeniable truth of his presence, the overwhelming evidence of a reality I had vehemently denied. Tears flowed, not physical tears, but a release of pure, potent emotion from the depths of my soul, a torrent of 66 years of suppressed longing, unacknowledged grief, and intellectual pride washing away. His energy, pure and loving, wasn't forcing belief, it was simply dissolving the barriers I had built against it, revealing a truth that had always been there, waiting beneath the surface of my skepticism. Jesus raised a hand, not in judgment, but as if parting a curtain. Another vision unfolded, overlapping the cosmic backdrop. This was the near future, starker and more detailed than the chaotic montage I'd seen earlier. It was the world after the initial cataclysm. I saw landscapes scarred and depopulated. Once great cities lay in ruins, testaments to humanity's destructive capacity. The sheer scale of loss was breathtaking. Billions had perished through war, starvation, disease, and the earth's violent upheavals. Yet, amidst the desolation, pockets of light remained. Small communities huddled together, rebuilding slowly, faces etched with hardship but illuminated by a resilient hope. And I saw the stark bifurcation of souls. Those consumed by selfishness, greed, and cruelty during the collapse seemed to simply dissolve. Their forms became wisps of black smoke, drawn into swirling vortices of darkness, their energy visibly feeding some vast, malevolent presence I understood to be the adversary, the embodiment of evil. It was a terrifying visual representation of souls lost forever. Conversely, those who had clung to compassion, who shared what little they had, who protected the vulnerable, who acted with love towards all beings, they seemed to glow with an inner resilience. They were shielded, guided, sustained by an unseen force. These were the meek, the pure in heart, destined, it seemed, to inherit the cleansed earth and begin the arduous task of building a new world founded on the principles they embodied. Jesus' voice brought my focus back to him, echoing now with the gravity of prophecy. For 80 years of your world's reckoning, he stated, the timeline specific and chilling, darkness was allowed a significant reign, a necessary phase to bring hidden impurities to the surface, completing a long cycle of planetary cleansing. The year you departed, 2023, marks the beginning of the Great Purification's most intense, visible phase. The battle between light and darkness, always waged in hearts and souls, now erupts onto the world stage with unprecedented ferocity. He gestured towards the memory of my world. You witnessed the prelude, escalating conflicts, economic instability, political chaos, increasingly severe natural disasters, widespread famine. These were but the opening tremors. Far greater tribulations are imminent. Losses will be profound. A wave of anguish washed over me as I thought of Emily, my bright, kind daughter, and my little grandson, Leo. His face full of innocent wonder. What about them? The question screamed in my soul, though my lips remained still. Jesus answered the unspoken plea. His eyes filled with compassionate understanding. All who genuinely choose the light, who align their hearts with love and truth, will receive protection. Shelter will be found, guidance given. Fear will test them, but faith will sustain them. His gaze sharpened, meeting mine with piercing intensity. But those who cling stubbornly to the old ways, to arrogance, to materialism, to disbelief, as you once did, Arthur, they will face the unvarnished, harsh reality of their choices. Humanity, in its hubris, believed itself master of the universe, capable of controlling nature, defining reality, even dismissing its creator. You are learning now how fragile that illusion truly is. My father need only divert his gaze for an instant. He continued, the cosmic perspective humbling, and the world you knew descends into chaos. The consequences you witnessed are unfolding. Yet, even now, in this 11th hour, mercy extends a final opportunity. His presence seemed to fill the infinite space, his eyes burning with divine fire and infinite love. I have returned, Arthur. Not in physical form upon your clouds, but in spirit, in consciousness. Closer than breathing to all who seek me. I am broadcasting this final warning across the realms. Return to the soul. Cast off the shackles of ego, the blindness of intellectual pride, the stubbornness of hardened hearts. Time has run out for indecision. Embrace the light within, connect with me through the purity of your own heart, or risk being swept away in the purification. Darkness will have its final, terrible flourish, he declared, and then it will be utterly vanquished from this sphere. Goodness, truth, and love shall reign upon the renewed earth, bringing an era of peace and abundance beyond current comprehension. But the transition demands a choice. The sorting is happening now. Anyone who does not consciously raise their hand for the light, who does not align with love, risks failing this crucial examination. Overwhelmed, humbled, stripped bare of my lifelong skepticism, I trembled before him. The scientist who demanded proof for everything, stood before the ultimate proof, Jesus Christ himself, revealing the cosmic drama, the fate of souls, the imminent transformation of the world. My entire existence had been founded on a profound misunderstanding of reality. The regret was crushing, but mingled with it was a dawning sense of awe and an unexpected surge of hope. Jesus placed a hand on my shoulder, an impossible sensation, for I had no shoulder, yet I felt it, a transfer of warmth, energy, and profound peace, like sunlight thawing a frozen landscape. You have a mission, Arthur, he said, his voice gentle again, yet resonant with purpose. You, the man of doubt, the seeker of empirical evidence. Have you not now experienced evidence enough? He looked deep into my soul. Return. Go back and tell them. Tell everyone who will listen, time is up. Tell them to cultivate gratitude, not grievance. Tell them to seek me not in crumbling buildings or ancient rituals alone, but within. I reside in the heart of every willing soul. Tell them to connect with me there, with sincerity, with humility, with love, and I will provide refuge, guidance, and strength through the coming storms. I am not distant, I am present. Tell them, simply think of me with a pure heart, and I will embrace them. A final surge of brilliant light emanated from him. His form began to fade, his voice echoing and diminishing within my consciousness, leaving behind an imprint of overwhelming love and urgent commission. I felt myself being pulled backward, tumbling away from the cosmic expanse, falling, back towards the dense vibration of the physical world. Abruptly, violently, I gasped. My eyes flew open, assaulted by the harsh fluorescent glare of hospital lights. Machines beeped insistently around me. A face loomed over mine, a doctor, eyes wide with astonishment. "He's back! Pulse is strong! Blood pressure stabilizing! My God! Thank God!" I heard the collective sigh of relief from nurses, the frantic rhythm of the heart monitor confirming my impossible return. Later they would tell me the details. 36 minutes without a heartbeat, catastrophic injuries from the crash, multiple fractures, collapsed lung, internal bleeding. Survival, they called it, was beyond medical explanation. A 1 in a million miracle. But I knew. Lying there, tethered to tubes and wires, feeling the dull throb of physical pain return, I knew it wasn't a random fluke of biology. It was divine will. It was the second chance Jesus had spoken of. It was the beginning of the mission he had given me. My physical recovery was long and arduous, 3 months in the hospital, followed by months more of rehabilitation. Broken ribs slowly mended, my damaged lung learned to draw breath again, countless bruises faded. But the real transformation occurred within, far deeper than flesh and bone. My mind replayed the NDE constantly, the terrifying clarity of the apocalyptic visions, the overwhelming love and authority in Jesus' eyes, the weight of his final warning. The experience hadn't dimmed, it remained vividly, intensely real, eclipsing the reality of the hospital room. More concrete than any scientific experiment I had ever conducted. I finally understood. Science, my lifelong pursuit, was a magnificent tool, capable of revealing incredible truths about the physical mechanics of the universe. But it was only one piece, one dimension, of a reality far vaster, more complex, and more meaningful than I had ever allowed myself to imagine. The soul, God's love, the eternal struggle between light and darkness, these were not myths or metaphors. They were the fundamental forces shaping existence. Upon leaving the hospital, the old Arthur Pendleton was gone. I didn't return to my research position at the lab. It wasn't that I suddenly hated science. I still revered the pursuit of knowledge. But my priorities had been irrevocably altered. I now had a greater purpose. A mission that transcended publishing papers or winning grants. I began to explore the territories I had once dismissed. I read the Bible with new eyes, not as historical text, but as spiritual guidance containing profound truths veiled in allegory. I studied the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the wisdom of various spiritual traditions, recognizing the common threads of divine love, ethical living, and the soul's journey woven through them all. I started attending church occasionally, not seeking God in the rituals or the dogma, but using the quiet space to connect inwardly, as Jesus had instructed. And I felt him, not as an external deity, but as a loving, guiding presence within my own heart. A constant source of strength and reassurance. Driven by the urgency of the message I carried, I began to write. Not a scientific treatise, but a raw, honest account of my experience. My life of skepticism, my death, my encounter with Jesus, the visions, the warnings, and the transformation. I titled it Light in the Darkness, a scientist's testimony. I didn't seek fame or fortune. My sole motivation was to fulfill the mission, to awaken others before it was too late. To my surprise, the book resonated deeply. It spread quickly, passed from hand to hand, discussed in online forums and book clubs. I received thousands of emails and letters from people across the country, many sharing their own struggles with doubt, faith, and the anxieties of our turbulent times. "Professor Pendleton," one man wrote, "your story shattered my lifelong atheism. I prayed last night for the first time in 40 years, and I felt something. Thank you." Reading those words, tears streamed down my face. I wasn't alone. The message was getting through. I was doing what he asked. My personal life transformed as well. I cherished my connection with Emily, calling her daily, truly listening, sharing my newfound understanding without preaching. I spent precious time with my grandson Leo, trying to instill in him the values of kindness, compassion, and reverence for life that I had neglected for so long. I visited Helen's grave, placing flowers, whispering to the silent stone, "I found him, Helen. I finally understand. I'm trying to make amends." I channeled my resources and energy into action, volunteering with charities helping those displaced by the increasing number of natural disasters, supporting food banks addressing growing insecurity. Seeing the gratitude in the eyes of those receiving help, feeling the connection of shared humanity, this provided a deeper satisfaction than any scientific award ever had. This was living the light. Now, my life has one singular focus: to be a conduit for the light, to share the warning and the hope I received. I was the ultimate skeptic, the man who demanded proof, who believed reason was the only path. But I was shown the truth, not in an equation, but in the face of global catastrophe and the loving eyes of Jesus Christ. I know I was granted this second chance not for my own merit, but through divine mercy, tasked with a sacred duty to awaken as many souls as possible before the final curtain falls. If you are reading or hearing my words now, I implore you, pause. Turn inward. Ask yourself honestly, what guides your life? Is it the pursuit of material wealth? Fleeting fame? Sensual gratification? Or is it love? Truth? Compassion? Service to something greater than your own ego? The world is trembling on the edge of profound transformation. The great purification Jesus spoke of is underway. Shed your prejudices, your intellectual arrogance, your cynical disbelief. Open your heart to the possibility of a reality beyond the purely physical. God is not confined to ancient books or stone buildings. He resides within you, waiting to be acknowledged. Turn to Him now, with sincerity, with a pure heart seeking truth and love, and you will find refuge. I am Arthur Pendleton. This is my testimony. I have witnessed the encroaching darkness of the end times. But I have also stood in the radiant, unconditional love and light of Jesus Christ. The time for complacency is over. The hour is late. Awaken. Choose the light. Choose love. Choose God. Today. Thank you, Lord, for entrusting me with this message. May it find fertile ground in the hearts of those who hear it. Arthur's journey from staunch skepticism to divine messenger is a powerful testament for our times. If his incredible experience resonated deep within you, like, share, and subscribe to ensure you don't miss the vital testimonies and messages of hope and warning we share daily. Click the notification bell to stay connected and awaken with us.